We are going to be covering the Excel Day 3 packet, which should be in your OneNote notebooks under the Excel tab. You should see one that is called Day 3 Packet across the top, and on the first page of the packet it says Excel Day 3 Functions. So before we get into talking about actual functions that we're going to be using in Excel, a couple other things, some sort of little bit of information that we did not cover in some of the other videos, mostly about deleting and clearing things out. So for deleting rows and columns, it's going to be the same process for both. You would right-click on the column that you want to get rid of, and then you have the option to delete. You can do the same thing for rows. You can right-click on a row and then go down to delete. When you do that, that row will disappear and everything below it will move up, or everything in a column will move over towards the left. If you have a whole bunch of formatting and numbers in your spreadsheet that you want to get rid of, you can use this option here for clearing the cells. So what that will do is if you highlight all of the cells that you want to clear, it's under the Home tab. So you highlight everything you want to clear. Under the Home tab in the Editing section, you have the option to clear. Then you can clear the formats, you can clear just the contents, that means the numbers that are in there, or you can clear everything. If you just hit the clear button, it will do the default of clearing everything. Alright, so moving on down onto the second page of the packet, talks about merging cells on the first half of the page. We talked about that a little bit on the last video that we did, but if we have a few cells that we want to merge together, we can highlight them, and then you go up on the front or on the Home tab. You have the option to, under alignment, go to merge and center. There's a couple options here where you have just merge cells, merge across, or unmerge. So maybe you want to put the cells, you want to split them back up. That's when you can use unmerge. Otherwise, for the most part, you will be using merge and center. So if we clicked that option now, you'd see that all of those cells are now one big A1 cell. I'm going to hit undo to go back and do what we did. So when we're using functions in Excel, functions are just a fancy word for equation or a math problem. So all of these things here in this section are some of the different functions that you can do. So some of the different commands that you can have Excel do for you to help figure out answers, to clean up your spreadsheet, or to do some of the work for you. So you've got sum, that's going to be your just addition and subtraction. I'm going to actually zoom in on this a little bit. And max will show you the maximum value of all of the cells. Minimum will do the exact opposite. It'll show you the smallest number in all of the cells selected. Rounding will round it for you, so you tell it how many decimals you want it to round towards. Median and average are the medians and averages. Just like you've learned about in math class, it will give you the median or the average of the selected group of numbers. Square root will determine the square root of the cell. Proper and upper are formatting text, not numbers. So proper changes it to initial caps, and upper changes everything to all caps. And then the function now puts in the current date and time. So for the exact moment that you go to open up that spreadsheet, that now function will always update and show the most recent date and time. So next thing I want you to do is I want you to copy this spreadsheet into Excel, and then we're going to play around with it for a little bit. Once you have your spreadsheet copied into Excel, it should look something like this. The first thing we need to do, though, is we need to make all of our data fit. I'm actually going to make this one a little bit bigger. There we go. And for this cell down here, I'm going to align it a little bit differently. There we go. So yours should look something like this when it's all set and ready for us to start playing around with. So what we are going to do is we are going to go through all of the different tasks down below the spreadsheet. So there's a handful of different ones that we're going to do to sort of complete our spreadsheet and add all of these functions in. So the first one that we need to do is calculate the player's batting average. So to do that, you would divide the number of hits by the number of at-bats. It gives an example for James Leving, which is that first one. It says C2 divided by B2, because we want to take the number of hits divided by the number of at-bats. So we would do equal sign C2 divided by B2. Then we're going to hit enter. It'll give us a percentage, and then we can use data fill to copy it down for the rest of the players. So that one is done. Moving on down to average. So in cell C11, which is this one right there next to average hits. So we're looking at that empty cell. You want to use the average function to see what the average number of hits was. So we're going to use that formula right there. So in C11, we're going to use equal average. And then we want Excel to calculate the average from C2, which is James Leving, down through Paul Robbins, which is C9. So we have C2. Now there's a couple ways we can do the next number. We want to use colon C9. When we use a colon, it's going to include all the numbers in between those. So if we had used C2 comma C9, it would only do C2 and C9. If we instead do C2 colon C9, that's going to mean C2 through C9. You see that this whole block was highlighted. I'm going to close the parentheses and then hit enter, and then it'll give us our average hits. In C12, so now we are looking at total hits. So next to that, we're going to be doing the sum. We want to use the sum function to add up the total number of hits by members of this team. So we will use that formula there. So we're going to do equal sign sum, because that means it's going to add them together. We'll put a parentheses around the numbers that we want to include, and we want to include cells C2 through C9. Now that's going to highlight all of them. Remember, we want to use that colon and not a comma. If we use a comma is like and. So if we do a sum of C2 and C9, it's only going to add up those two numbers. It'll give us the number 63. That's way too low. We instead want to make sure that we do sum C2 colon C9. It'll highlight the whole column for us, hit enter, and then we get our total hits. The last one on this page that we're going to do is max. So that is the most hits in cell C13. So right below it, we are going to use the maximum function to see what the highest number of hits was. So which player had the most number of hits. So we're going to use that function for max. So equal sign max parentheses C2 colon C9. Hit enter. The maximum number of hits was 43, which was Rick Baker. Let's move on to the next page of formulas. The least number of hits in cell C14. We're going to use that function to see who had the least number of hits. It's going to work just like the max function, but it will do the opposite. So we're going to do equal sign min for minimum C2 colon C9 and parentheses. Make sure that whole column is highlighted. Hit enter. The least number of hits was 8, and that was Barry Gordon. The last thing that we are doing is the round. Actually, not last. We've got two more. The second to last one is round. So we're going to round these super long batting averages to 3 decimals. So our formula is going to look like this. There's an explanation down here, but I'm also going to talk you through it. The first thing that we need to do is we need to add the column an E1. We need to do rounded batting average. So we're going to take these super long, ugly batting average numbers and round them down. So when we're doing a round formula, we're going to do equal sign round, then the parentheses. Then here it's giving us a little bit of a hint of what we need to do. So we're going to tell it what cell, what number we want it to round. We want it to round D2. So we'll start with D2. It'll highlight it for us. And then we do comma space. And then we're going to tell it the number of digits we want it to round to. So we want it to round to 3 decimal places, so we're going to put a 3. We hit enter, or close the parentheses, then hit enter, and then it'll round it like that for us. If we wanted it to round to 2 decimal places, we could change it to a 2 and hit enter. You see it rounds it up to 6. Instead, we're going to leave it at 3. And then we're going to use our little plus sign and copy that formula all the way down so that on the rounded batting average, we have nice, neat 3 decimal point batting averages. So now in cell C15, this very last one, we're going to use those rounded batting averages to get the median batting average. So what is in the middle? So we're going to use the formula equal sign median. And then we are actually looking at column D this time. We're not looking at column C anymore. We're looking at D. We do D2 colon D9. Close the parentheses, hit enter, and that'll give us the median batting average. You could, if you wanted to, also do the same for E and see how close they are. E2 colon E9. So they're pretty close. So whether we're looking at the rounded batting average, which is this one, or the full batting average, which is that one, they're pretty similar. There are a few other functions down on this last sheet. I want you to make a new page. So once you have a new page and you've copied this information in, your table should look just like this. And you want to make sure it does look exactly like this, like you've typed it in, just like it says on the sheet over here. It says make sure you type it in exactly as is. So we're going to use a couple functions on here, the square root, proper, upper, and now. I can fix something here. So the first one we're going to do is the square root of the numbers. So to get the square root, you type equal sign, SQRT, and then in parentheses, the number, the cell that you want the square root of. It's a very simple one. Hit enter, it'll give you that square root, and then you can copy that down for the rest of the numbers. Proper is going to change the text to initial caps, which means it is going to make the first letter of each word capital. So you would type in equal sign proper A1, hit enter, and might help if I spelled it right. There we go. And then you're going to see that it makes it nice and neat for you. And you can also change that from proper to upper. Hit enter and you're going to see that it's now all capital letters. The last function in here is now. You're going to do equal sign, now, and then empty parentheses, hit enter, and it will put today's date and time in for you. Those are all the functions that you're going to need for your homework. You can go into your notebook, find your homework sheet for Excel Worksheet Day 3, get started on this, and upload it to On Campus when you're finished.